And now, from the Room 111 studios, it's Hacking Engagement with James Sternovich.
Hey there, listener. Welcome back to the Hacking Engagement podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Episode 150. Dang, I can't believe I've done that many episodes. Wow. So, enough of that. I mean, it just struck me, you know, when I typed in the title today, how many of these I've done, and I'm still going, baby. Still feeling good. So, I'm excited about this episode, and I'm going to just tell a quick story here. I went to grade school in a small town, and our elementary school was on Main Street, right smack dab in the center of town. And this is a small town. A few of my most vivid elementary school memories were the brief class excursions we took into town. And, you know, it was such a small town. We just walked places. You know, what a magical memory. On various days, we visited the local post office. There was a dairy in our town. We went to the dairy. It was really something, man. There was a glass blower in town. We went to the glass blower. And finally, we went to the bakery. That was a pretty sweet trip, no pun intended. Now, I had no aspirations as a young person to be a postman, to be a dairy farmer, to be a glass blower, or to be a baker. Regardless, I loved those field trips. It got us out of the stale classroom. It unveiled to us how products that we regularly consumed were produced and distributed. I loved those experiences, and my classmates did too. We'd cheer every time a new scenic detour was announced. Those experiences happened 50 years ago. That blows me away to think about that. 50 years ago, and it still has this vivid place in my mind, this vivid compartment in my mind. That's engagement. And here, dear listener, is where Brent and Molly Watson make their dramatic appearance. Brent and Molly have created the Garden Learning Lab. It's an awesome community resource. It's exciting and humbling to think that in the year 2071, some old timer will be waxing eloquently about the trip they made to the Garden Learning Lab way back in 2021. This has a great potential, this episode. Buckle up, man. I think you're going to love it, and I'm hoping it's going to inspire you. Here's my elevator pitch for my brand new book, Teaching in Magenta. This book provides 100 ways to create a magnificent day in your classroom. Once you start stringing some magenta days together, you and your students will experience profound well-being and deep joy. That's Teaching in Magenta, which is now available on Amazon's virtual shelves. So here we are in the Room 111 studios, and before I introduce my guests, I want to say that the weather is perfect for this episode. And you might be thinking, well, what does that matter? Well, you're going to find out pretty soon why that matters. Because I have two friends here. I have Brent and Molly Watson. Please say hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Oh, good. You guys didn't do it at the same time. You didn't talk over each other. If you haven't guessed already, they're married, and they're not talking over each other, and they've been married a long time. That's a really positive sign. Now, I'm talking about the weather today, and, you know, mid-May in Ohio, I mean, come on. I mean, it just is perfect out today. It's going to be 63 degrees, and there's not going to be a cloud in the sky. So that's relevant because I imagine the Garden Learning Center is absolutely exploding right now. Is that correct?
It's starting to. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
It's had its challenges, you know, with some of the cold weather.
It has been cold.
To this point.
Yeah.
So ups and downs, but that's part of the natural world. So,
you know something, I jumped the gun there because I remember having a garden as a kid, and you do plant seeds later than you think, don't you?
Yeah, you have to be. Patience is is a key aspect to this.
Yeah, I think it's pretty important in general. Now, Brent, I'm going to put you on the spot first before I put Molly on the spot. And I'm going to say something that I think you're probably going to say, yes, that's true. But I'm taking a guess here. I might be off on this. But I don't remember one student in the last 20 years who had the first name Brent. But I remember a bunch of kids when I was growing up that had the name Brent. Is that accurate?
And it was really unique for us. Growing up, there weren't that many Brents, but there were a couple that I knew. But the Brent that went to school with me ended up being my best friend, so we were the two Brents.
Very good. I don't know anybody under the age of like 30 who's called Brent. Do you?
No.
But I bet you it makes a comeback. I bet you it makes a solid comeback.
I get Brett and Bert and all kinds of other things, and I say I answered any of them.
Yeah, that's funny. Maybe Bert on Sesame Street kind of like monopolized the one syllable B sound or something. I don't know, man. All right, so Brent, before we got on, we're talking about this wonderful gardening center that you guys have created, and you made mention of the fact that you are the back-breaking labor behind this organization. Is that accurate?
Well, I do what the boss tells me for the most part, but she certainly carries her share of things. But we both have our division of labors.
I bet you get sore sometimes, don't you?
As the years move on, I certainly do. What's the sciatica thing I keep hearing about? Oh, this really stinks.
Yeah. Well, it's good for you. It's good for you to keep moving. It's good for you to be out in the sunshine. I think it's great. But kudos for you because that is hard work.
It is, but it's very rewarding. And we keep saying that people are never unhappy around flowers or around being outside. We just have such a great time with the positive vibes that we get from folks. So it's all energizing. Perfect
answer, man. Now, Molly, you and I go way back. I mean, way back. Back. Explain that statement.
Well, we were classmates at Muskingum College.
Right.
And incidentally have the exact same birth date.
Dang, man.
Yay.
That's crazy. And you grew up in Cambridge, right?
Actually, it was Brent that grew up in Cambridge. I grew up in New Jersey.
Well, what the heck? I thought we were even closer than that. So New Jersey, I did not know that. Where in New Jersey?
The Jersey Shore.
Wow.
Not the Jersey Shore from the old TV show, but the Jersey Shore that is sort of a resort town, and it wasn't really resort like when I was growing up. It was much more quiet, sleepy little town that happened to be next to the ocean.
Okay, so we went to the same school. We had the same birthday, but the connections don't stop there. How
That's right.
How did we reconnect?
We moved to Sunbury, Ohio.
We just follow each other around, man.
We moved here because of the good quality of the excellent quality of the school system. And lo and behold, one of the excellent teachers in the school system was you.
Wow. Weird.
And so, we were so thrilled that our kids would go through the school system and go, and both of our kids ended up having you as a teacher, and absolutely you were one of their favorites.
Well, I didn't teach them anything. They were too darn smart. I just sat there and got out of the road. How's that? and speaking of getting out of the road, speaking of teachers getting out of the road and letting students explore and grow, that's kind of what this whole episode's all about. Molly, you and I are the same age, exactly the same age. I mean, precisely the same age. Brent, I think we're close, but I don't know if you're older or younger.
Oh, I'm younger.
Hallelujah, man.
I'm a year and a half younger.
Bless your heart, man. Robbing the cradle. Robbing the cradle. I love it, man.
And these common ties go even further than what you're talking about with Molly. Your mom and my mom were good friends between New Concord and Cambridge.
That's crazy, man. And For some reason, I was thinking that Molly grew up in Cambridge, but that's not the case. It was you.
No, I'm the Southeastern Ohio boy.
We're the twangers. Okay, now, I don't know about you, but this age has been fun for me, and I'm going through some creativity, but it seems like you two are going through a creative explosion. Number one, is that true? And number two, if it's true, why is this creative explosion on your part happening?
Well, we were both in the media production. We had a media production company that we did video production and web development. Mm-hmm. And we kind of felt like we were at a career crossroads.
Stressing us out.
It was stressing us out, that always having to look for the next project.
Yeah.
And the kids were grown and off doing their own thing. And we had moved to this property, which was an old dairy farm, in the 1990s, and loved it and loved the quality of being close to the earth, and had always wanted to bring it back to being used as a farm. Mm-hmm. And so we decided that we actually, it was through a trip to the Pacific Northwest that
yes,
inspired us to get into, actually at that time, lavender production.
What a wonderful part of the country. Keep going, man.
And, it was wonderful. And we were just inspired by the beauty and the opportunities mm-hmm. that were a little more unique. And so we started lavender farming, and that developed into cut flower farming. And that has led us to where we are today.
Wow. Now, that's interesting in itself. But then it went a step further. You contacted me on Facebook recently promoting a product of this creativity that you're experiencing. It's called the Garden Learning Lab. Here we go, baby. What is the Garden Learning Lab?
Well, along with our cut flower sales, we have been teaching workshops on the farm. We have a studio classroom, mm-hmm. and we've been teaching workshops on flower relaxation and flower arranging for several years. And then last year, with all the restrictions due to COVID, mm-hmm. we saw a real interest in people having educational enrichment opportunities.
Yeah.
And we felt this calling to engage people in the magic of actually growing flowers and food, and thought this would be a great way to support what the kids are learning in school.
Excellent. And here's I'm going to take this right from your website, or right from your Facebook page, I guess. Our Garden Learning Lab will provide an engaging way to build on almost any subject, bringing classroom lessons to life through hands-on experience and active participation. That's beautiful, man. Elaborate on that.
Well, we've built a greenhouse, mm-hmm. and we are in the process of building outside growing beds and different learning stations for things like weather and compost and other sustainability concepts.
Okay. Now, how have you taken this idea and advertised it to local schools?
Well, we're in the process of creating it, mm-hmm. and we've talked to quite a few people in the local school districts. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of interest. We actually are kind of reacting to the interest that people have shown when they come out to our farm. They love to look around. Everybody comes out and they say, "Oh, I remember growing things with my parents or my grandparents," and it's that warm, fuzzy feeling of
right.
the memories and the lessons that we learn in the dirt.
I love that. And it's so interesting. And in the introduction to this program, I tell a story that'll resonate with both of you, I am absolutely certain. In my elementary years, I lived in a very small town. And, taking a field trip was just as easy as walking out the door and going a couple blocks. It was not like today. So we we had a local dairy in New Concord. We went to the post office. We went to the glass blower, and we went to the bakery. Now, that was 50 years ago, and I remember those experiences vividly. And what's incredible about that is I had no interest in being any of those things. It didn't matter. It was just like this really fun experience where I got out of the stale classroom and saw like the inner workings of something that I consumed on a regular basis. I had great respect for glass, that glass that I'm drinking whatever out of now.
Yeah.
I was amazed at how many steps the Valentine card I got actually went through before it went into my hands.
Right.
I was amazed at how many animals were down at the dairy. I didn't know there were that many there. And I was also very hungry for donuts for about a month.
Only a month?
Yeah, that's right. So, it's not like a student has to become like a botanist to come visit the garden learning lab.
Right.
They certainly eat. They certainly eat vegetables. Hopefully they eat vegetables. They certainly have seen flowers. This process is so much more interesting than looking at a Google slide presentation on how things grow. I absolutely love it. Now, pretend that you're a student and you can make this student whatever grade you want. Actually, you could handle probably any age level, but just take like a typical student that you envision, and they're visiting the Garden Learning Lab. Create a description of the transformational experience that this kid might have.
So typical kid comes in and first of all, they see lots of dirt. And one of the things that we want to encourage is the yes, you can, and let's try it kind of mentality.
Sure.
Not don't do that, don't touch that, be careful, all the negative.
Don't touch the dirt, you'll get the dirt dirty.
Right. It's supposed to be a joyous opportunity to explore. Uh-huh. And we'll talk about, the basics of what a plant needs, just like a person needs love and nurturing and water. And just like a person, then a plant needs love and nurturing and good food and water and soil. And so we'll have the kids work in dirt. We have raised beds that will be sort of the community bed of the class that they will all participate in together, creating the teamwork aspect. And then each one will have their own tray they plant their own seeds. And at the end of the class, they will be able to take those home with the knowledge of how to put them in their own yard or in containers, and hopefully get a little harvest of the. I just yesterday harvested some radishes that I had planted in our little garden learning lab bed. They're absolutely delicious, and I think kids don't get there's something magical about picking something out of a garden and popping it in your mouth. Now, obviously, the radish has dirt on it, but we'd wash it. Yesterday, I was also we have some spinach in the garden, and I'm not a big spinach fan when it's cooked, but I snipped off a lettuce, a spinach leaf, popped it in my mouth. It was clean, and because we don't use any chemicals on the plants, and so I just popped the spinach leaf in my mouth, and it was absolutely amazing.
Wow. Something.
So many of these opportunities.
Go ahead, Brent.
Sorry. So many of these opportunities kids are missing out on today. We want them to be able to be inquisitive. We want them to be confident after they've gone through this process. Probably, certainly with you and with me and with Molly, we had exposures to gardens. I wasn't growing up to be a farmer at the time, but I went to relatives' farms, saw where the food came from, saw how things were happening today, and figuring out where food comes from. For most people, it's just going to your grocery shelf and picking it out. We want the kids to be able to not only realize how things come to be at the grocery store, but also to take some ownership in that process, and then at the end of this, feel confident in the ability to do this on their own.
Hey, have you guys had any classes come yet?
Not yet.
Here's the one piece of advice that I'm going to give you. And this is important because you might have some students that are standoffish. You might have some students that don't seem interested. You're going to have that. Absolutely. You'll have that. But you don't know what type of impact you're having on them. That kid that seems disinterested, that seems like, I'm not going to do this or whatever, that kid might be the one that goes home that night and says to his parents, let's plant a garden. So don't be discouraged if kids are a little standoffish. I'll bet you're making a huge impact. And I know that's the case because when my mom passed away a few years ago, we cleaned out her house, and I found the glass that I got as a souvenir when we went to the glass blower. And right now, it is my go-to fine wine with a nice meal dinner glass. And and it brings back this magnificent memory of going to this glass blower 50 years ago. Who'd have thunk, man? Who'd have thunk? So you might have, and I think I was kind of bored on that one. I think I was kind of standoffish on that one. So like I say in the like I say in the intro and in the exit of this episode, it's humbling to think that some kid in the year 2071, when they are our age, might say,
oh, gosh.
I remember going to the garden learning lab back in 2021. Yeah. So that's what you could be creating.
We always tell each other life is full of stages. And if you told me 20 years ago that we were going to be doing this, I always say my favorite color of grass back then was brown. I loved it when I didn't have to mow this growing stuff anymore. Yeah. But we were tied up in other things. We had other things going, and life was busy, and didn't have as much time for that independent growing of vegetables and things. We've always had a garden, but we didn't have this idea until later in life. But who knows where it came back. How it came around.
I'm looking out of my yard right now, and it's grown since we started this podcast. This is a crazy time of year, man. It's nuts.
I loved gardening with my dad. My dad was an electrical engineer and commuted, this is New Jersey, commuted into the city every day, and long hours. And on the weekends, during the summer, he and I did a little garden, and we had raspberries and carrots and peas and corn, in our tiny little, 8 by 10 foot garden. We had all of these things. And in fact, even before I was born, my older brother and sister, they grew cotton.
Dang.
In New Jersey. Peanut. He loved to experiment. And the memories that he built with them in their generation, because they're considerably older than I am, and I'll tell them that to their face. And the memories that he built with me, he was not going to be a farmer. He was an electrical engineer, but the enjoyment and relaxation and peace he found in digging in the dirt and putting a seed in the ground and having it grow is magic.
You said something really important there, and that's the fact that it wasn't just the relaxation, it wasn't just the produce, it was quality time you spent with your father. And I remember each teacher that took us on those field trips. I remember each one of them. I don't really remember much else from their classes, but I do remember those field trips. So this could also be like this incredible bonding experience for your students and you. And we don't do enough field trips anymore. We just don't do them. Like we used to. We need to get back to them. They're really important.
They really are. And getting out of the four walls of the classroom, like you said earlier, It's so important to have just a different place to experience the world and new ideas and new concepts. And for us, this whole thing is such a wonderful opportunity to keep us physically active, but also keep us mentally active, because we had to ramp up with all of this information on how to grow things, the weather, we are constantly monitoring the weather. We're constantly monitoring rainfall and temperatures. And so it's kind of an explosion of your mind,
right, of
all the things that you have to keep in mind. And for different vegetables, different flowers, everything has different likes and different hates of conditions, sunlight and temperatures and things like that. So it's a lot of mental exercise too.
For someone who probably likes to be in control of what takes place on a daily basis, having your life dictated by the weather is probably an interesting stretch for you.
It is. And it's, you make a really good point in that we like to be in control, but in many cases we are not. No. And we have to learn to roll with the punches. And the past couple of nights have been frosty nights, and we've had to cover things that were tender and keep monitoring. One night that it was really cold, Brent got up in the middle of the night for the plants.
You used to get up and change your kids' diapers. Now you're going out and changing the plants' diapers. That's wow. That's bringing you back home.
These little babies we're counting on.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, now you really answered my next question, which is why such an experience is necessary. But I want you to think about something for a minute. You are role models for other adults to create opportunities. Now, you guys are at a point in your life where it's easier for you than it would have been 20 years ago. There's no question about that. But still, it's important to create learning opportunities for local students. So, like, how do you respond to that statement? I mean, that you might be a role model for others to do something similar.
Well, certainly not the reason we got into it, but our experiences, we like to share both the good, but also the
challenges,
more difficult, more ugly parts of it.
Right.
And I think certainly having that sense of what, so right now, like in flower farming, there's kind of with COVID and everybody being their lives thrown upside down in the past year, there's been an explosion in people doing flower farming. Wanting to get back and have that beauty and get that out to people. But you also have to be realistic. And I think that's what some of these folks have found going into it, that it's not just going down the rows and something that, with a wick basket and just calmly picking each little flower out and putting it into the basket and on a bright sunny day. So we try to be realistic, certainly, in talking about it. But there's opportunities everywhere for this kind of thing. In some cases, with school gardens, there's some overlap of what we're trying to do. But school gardens, when they work well, they work really well. When there's problems,
they certainly have challenges.
They have challenges from the aspect of not having enough help for it, doing things trying to keep things going over the summer, trying to have a garden coordinator that may need to be compensated.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
So what we found is the case studies for successful garden labs engage the community. So there might be an individual out there that's a master gardener or works with or is in a garden club, and they volunteer their time with these school gardens, and that's a recipe for success. Trying to be role models or anything for it, we try to be realistic in every respect, but also show that there's a variety of opportunities for being able to give something back, find fulfillment, to have an impact on young people's lives.
you said something really crucial. You said like you researched successful community gardens. In other words, you you asked the questions, what happens in the summertime? You asked those questions. And it probably wasn't that difficult to find answers to those questions. And so what I'm hearing you say is if you have an idea, you can probably do a little research and learn from someone who's done something similar.
Absolutely.
No doubt. That whole internet thing, it's pretty cool.
It is. Yes. That was really solid advice. I mean, I hadn't thought about the summertime. It's like, oh, crap. School's out. Now what?
Yeah, we see these heartbreaking pictures of all throughout the school year, all the time, effort, and money, in many cases, that have been put into school gardens. And then it's like, oh, summer. What do we do then? How do we line up?
What do you do now? Yeah, right.
People to come in and weed. How do we line up somebody to keep things going with water, harvesting, all those kinds of things that come into place that we're hoping to be able to get past those things with the Garden Learning Lab. We're here.
Yeah, we live this.
We're committed.
Hopefully you'll have some.
Every day doing it.
Hopefully you'll have some ultra engaged students come out and give you a hand.
And that's what we want. Have a sense of ownership in what we're building.
Beautiful.
So these kids go through the classes, and hopefully they'll do it multiple summers. If they come here for.
I think what would be awesome is if the school would put some skin in the game and give them some credit for that work.
That would be wonderful.
So I would go at it from that angle, like maybe an independent study, maybe just like have a science teacher sign off or whatever. But if you could get particularly some high school kids that are bigger and stronger and have a mode of transportation involved, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, and so often they're looking for community service hours.
No kidding.
This would be an ideal opportunity.
No kidding.
I took a course through the Wisconsin School Garden Network about managing and running a educational garden, and part of that was success stories and cautions. Stories.
Sure.
And one of several of them had the older kids that had already been through came back as sort of assistant teachers and would be sort of like almost a big brother, big sister kind of thing to younger kids. And I think that's a wonderful opportunity to have this sort of continuum of learning, because even as you know, when you teach, you learn
That's
a lot.
Sure. Mm-hmm. That's for sure. That is for sure.
So they learn as a kid, they come back as a teenager and teach, but in teaching they learn, and they learn about themselves, they learn about how to interact with younger kids. It's a win-win-win.
Very good. Hey, listen, we've talked a lot about kids, and we've talked a lot about locals who could maybe create an experience for a youngster, but give a piece of advice to a teacher. I mean, I'll just shut up. I'll let you guys talk. Give a piece of advice to an educator.
Walking the footsteps, of teachers. Yeah. We have such,
God bless them.
Yeah, incredible respect for what they do on a daily basis and all the demands and challenges, especially recently, that have been placed on them. We don't have a lot of exposure outside of our local environment, our local school district.
Although we have relatives who are teachers, and we listen very carefully to things they say.
and they start talking, man. They sometimes talk a lot.
Lots of good information and some real scary stories too. My philosophy is that, and I think you touched on this earlier, every kid has something that will ignite that spark of curiosity in them. Mm-hmm. You taught that in the classroom. Sometimes it's found in books, and kids that just can read and read and read, that's where they get their educational nourishment. But sometimes it's found in the world around them, and it's just important to listen to each one of them, because each individual person has something that you can find, if you look carefully enough and listen to them and observe them, that will just unlock the world to them. And like you said, it doesn't have to be that they'll grow up and become vegetable farmers or get into agriculture at all. I think it's just a matter of being very intentional in listening and being there for the kids.
That's great advice, man. I love it. Hey, so today, you guys got some work to do, don't you?
Got some planting to do. It's gorgeous weather.
So what's right after this phone call? We're lunch?
Actual planting.
Planting. I started starting seeds inside back in early March, and little by little, as each one is ready out, considering the conditions, I've been planting them out. But I have about 6 trays of plants, so approximately 600 plants.
I want to warn you that you could really upset your children if you were more sentimental about putting those plants out of the house as you were to sending your kids to college.
We were pretty sentimental about sending them off to college. They both went to Wisconsin, to small schools in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So it's
so if you put on a YouTube later of you like weeping over like taking this plant out of the that might not go over too well with the offspring. Just a word of warning. Hey guys, you've been wonderful. I think that you're an inspiration to in particular someone who's thinking, maybe I need to get more involved with young people. Listen to this episode, or if you know someone who you think might have that inclination, maybe reach out to them. I mean, the worst they can say is no.
Yeah.
Brent and Molly, it's been my pleasure to talk to you. I'm really excited about what you're doing. I'll help however I can.
Thank you very much. Really,
no problem.
We've got a Kickstarter going for helping to fund the last bits of our garden learning lab, and just recently had we can give you a scoop.
Hey, listen, I will definitely put a link for that on the show notes.
That'd be great.
Make a quick pitch for it right now.
The kindness of people, sometimes you're floored by it. And when I was selling flowers the other day, a gentleman came up and said he and his wife would like to match whatever contributions are made to our crowdfunding project. So he will match every contribution up to $2,850. He and his wife.
Yeah.
He said that, and I said, thank you.
And when Brent told me, I started to cry.
So it's an inspirational story of people. They believe strongly in this as something that has great merit in being able to educate kids, but also to just unlock that sense of wonder in them. And so we're incredibly humbled by that. And so we're trying to make sure that we can get to that point and maximize those funds, which will enable us to put in also an aquaponics component of this to introduce as a innovative agricultural practice. And kids really groove on it. We're very excited about that potential.
Hey, when I tell my listeners to go to the show notes, that's like telling the students in my intro to education class to look at the syllabus. They're probably not going to do that. So give them information. Someone's listening to this and wants to contribute. How do they do it?
Well, it's on Kickstarter. So Kickstarter.com. And if you just search for Garden Learning Lab.
Garden Learning Lab, Kickstarter.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah, there's a picture of a little girl in a garden next to some corn plants.
It's a nice picture. I like that picture.
That would be me. Back in 19s.
Yeah, gotcha, man. Beautiful, beautiful. Hey, okay. I love what you guys have to say, and have a bountiful day.
Thank you very much.
So we are at the What You Can Do Tomorrow section, and the problem is simple. Kids are just too isolated in the classroom. And we need to get a little old school here and consider going on field trips again. I know it's kind of a hassle, but it's really worthwhile. So the solution is to inspire a local resident or business person to create a learning experience for your students. So what you need to do tomorrow is you need to study your curriculum for outside learning opportunities and be creative. Think outside the box. I mean, going to the glassblower didn't have a lot to do with third grade, but I'm still talking about it. And then you need to check with your administration about the feasibility and logistics of taking a class excursion. I know that paperwork involved is a headache, but they're really worthwhile opportunities for kids. And then finally, recruit a local to host your class and help create this experience. And they might have a vision for how that class might unfold that you haven't even considered. All you can do is ask. Hey, creating a community learning opportunity for your students could inspire a future calling. I had a friend who went to the optometrist when he was 10 years old and decided that's exactly what he wanted to do. And by gosh, he's a pretty wealthy optometrist today. So not only could it possibly create a future calling, I guarantee it's going to create a vivid, enduring memory of your class. And you'll probably be in there too. Good luck tomorrow engaging your kids.
Show notes for this episode can be found at jamesallensturnevant.com. If you enjoy Hacking Engagement, please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes.